The young man asked the first question. Am I dead? A few minutes ago, he jumped in front of an out-of-control truck to save a little girl. But now, he finds himself in a paradise-like place, face to face with a winged woman and a dog. The woman, looking calm, replied, No. Time is currently stopped, but your death is near. His name is Jinguji Joe, 21 years old, just graduated from Japan's National Defense Academy. He remembered the moment he rushed out to save the little girl from the dirt truck that ran the red light. Thought he had actually died and gone to heaven. But the truth turned out to be different. The woman explains that time has paused and she is speaking directly to his soul. To Jinguji's surprise, she introduces herself as what in his world is called a god. Surprised the young soldier. She said she is one of the managers of space and time. At the same time, he revealed that he sent a servant to his world, in the form of a dog, to expand his knowledge of the human world. The god's servant was supposed to protect the girl. But due to being distracted by a butterfly, the dog lost focus and led the girl astray into the street, caused an accident that implicated Jinguji. The goddess bowed her head and apologized to him for this carelessness, and when she saw him still standing motionless, she explained that it was normal to be shocked to learn that she died due to a god's mistake. In fact, military discipline arose in Jinguji, and he realized that before him was a superior of all humanity. So he stood silently listening, not daring to move. After apologizing again, the god was reminded by his dog that time was running out. Reaching forward, the goddess made an offer to atone. Jinguji, do you want me to reincarnate you? In her palm appeared an image of a globe and a human figure. Symbolizes the new world and his body. She explains that she will copy his body, soul, and memories and transfer them to another world under her control. However, she warns that the time remaining is very short. The goddess explained that, when time began to move again, she would no longer be able to copy his living body, and could no longer delay it. Not wanting Jinguji to die so unjustly, she pleaded, Do you agree with my proposal? Jinguji took a deep breath, asking if it was possible to reincarnate him right in his old world. The goddess regretfully replied that once death was confirmed, it could not be reversed in the same world. This is beyond her authority. Understanding the situation, he continued to ask, Is there any way for him to communicate with his friends or family after reincarnating? The goddess explained that this was also impossible, as he would be transported to a completely different world, where he would never meet anyone from the old world again. Hearing that, Jinguji gulped, thinking of his family before accepting the answer. He asked the final question, Will the little girl he saved survive thanks to his sacrifice? Surprised by this humane question, the god calmly replied that the girl would escape unharmed. All thanks to his sacrifice. Hearing that, a smile appeared on Jinguji's face. He greeted the goddess with a military salute, then asked to be reincarnated into a new world. The goddess thanked him for accepting the offer and, to help him survive in this strange world. She gave him her blessings. And a special ability. Before being reborn, she told him to remember what she was about to say. When he awoke, Jinguji found himself standing on a paved path amidst the ruins, in front of a small temple. Dedicated to the goddess who sent him here, looking down at his hands, he was surprised that everything seemed unchanged. His body remained the same. Is this really a copy of my body? He wondered. It feels like you've just been transported to another place. Scanning the surrounding forest, he felt the gaze of something watching him from the bushes. When he saw a small road through the forest, he hoped it would lead him to a nearby village. The goddess's instructions echoed in his head, and he concluded that he needed weapons to get through this forest. Putting his hand forward, Jinguji was surprised. When a 5.56mm Type 89 rifle appeared before his eyes, the goddess gave Jinguji the ability Archive. Allows him to store and summon objects at will without limits. In addition, she also provided him with equipment that he should have received before his sudden death. That is the equipment of the Japanese Ground Self-Defense Force, the kit he will be given when he receives his assignment. Jinguji quickly put on his field uniform, tightened his shoelaces, attached his bayonet to his gun, and put on his helmet. Once fully equipped, he solemnly greeted the goddess, grateful that she had given him a new chance in this world. With his rifle in hand, he started walking down the stone path. Towards the strange world he would now explore. As he walked through the ruins and forests, images from his past life flashed through his mind. He recalled the moment when he was asked why he joined the self-defense forces. His answer was extremely simple but meaningful. I want to become someone who protects the lives of others. One who protects the innocent. Jinguji believes that becoming a self-defense force officer will allow him to save more lives. That thought motivated him to overcome all challenges during the training process. He felt satisfied that he had acted quickly to save a life in the old world. and has no regrets even if it leads to his death. But for him, that's not enough. I know that wherever I am, no matter how many times I reincarnate, you can do it all, protect those who need to be protected. Jinguji's thoughts were interrupted when he saw light filtering through the trees in front of him. He realized he was about to leave the forest. At that moment, a scream rang out, causing him to immediately run towards the sound. In a clearing in the middle of the forest, there was a girl with rabbit ears. Looking in horror at the giant creature in front of him. The monster was tearing apart a horse it had just killed. Terrified, she stood motionless, hoping that the monster wouldn't notice her. Her companions, fleeing, discovered she was still there, and tried to shout and urge the girl, whose name was Belle, to quickly get up. However, there was blood from a scrape on Belle's knee, attracted the monster's attention. It began to move closer, smelling and tasting from a close distance. Before the monster was about to grab Belle, her companion was afraid that she wouldn't be able to come to her rescue in time, and Belle closed her eyes tightly, waiting for death. Suddenly, two of the monster's fingers were shot off, blood spurting out everywhere. Belle and the swordsman were surprised by this unexpected turn of events. The monster did not have time to look closely at his wound. Then another bullet shot straight into its head, killing it instantly. The rabbit girl turned around in shock, and saw Jinguji kneeling beside her, asking if she was okay. And held out his hand to help her up. But before Belle could take his hand, she shouted a warning as the monster stood up again, eyes glowing red. Reacting quickly, Jinguji firmly grasped the rifle, then used his bayonet to stab the monster in the eye. Seeing giant creatures attacking innocent people, he wondered what world this was. But anyway, that's not important. His mission remains clear: protect the girl. He smiled reassuringly at Belle. Then turned around to face the injured monster. Realizing that a few bullets were not enough to defeat it, Jinguji set the gun's firing mode to full automatic. Raised the gun to his face, his eyes filled with determination to discover his true abilities in this world. He pulled the trigger, firing a series of bullets at the monster, finally defeating it. When he looked up, he discovered two other creatures slithering out of the forest, realizing that the monster just now was not alone. Don't underestimate the Type 89, he thought to himself, raising his rifle and aiming straight at the new enemies. This time, a series of automatic bullets aimed at the head caused the first monster in the group to fall. There was only one left, but it was faster than he thought. In the blink of an eye, the creature jumped up, preparing to use its weapon to strike down from above. Jinguji was horrified when he realized he didn't have time to aim. Just when danger was near, the monster was stabbed in the side by an arrow and cut across the neck by a long sword. Turning around, Jinguji saw that Belle's teammates had come to his aid, with the swordsman loudly telling him to repeat his strike. I can speak Japanese, Jinguji thought, remembering what the god had explained about his ability to communicate in this world. He immediately aimed his weapon straight at the monster's head. Jinguji pulled the trigger, discharged the entire magazine onto the target. With the last monster down and his mission complete, he lowered his gun and thought to himself, this is truly a strange world. Wiping the blood flowing from my cheeks, he turned to the woman next to him and saw her stammering thanks to him. Now, when the danger had passed, Jinguji realized she had rabbit ears. Before he could react, he received a strong pat on the back from the swordsman, who was looking extremely surprised at what he considered explosive magic. The swordsman continued to pat Jinguji's shoulder enthusiastically. From a nearby carriage, a voice called out, calling the swordsman Gilbert, asking if it was safe to go out. The swordsman quickly confirmed, telling the man named Antonio that he could now step out. Antonio stepped out carefully, his eyes full of appreciation looking at Jinguji, and called him an extraordinary magician for slaying so many ogre monsters on his own. He thanked Jinguji for saving his life and introduced himself as a merchant. At this time, Jinguji begins to realize that this world is like coming out of a fantasy story. Jinguji Joe introduces himself to Antonio. However, the name Jinguji makes traders feel strange. When Jinguji explained that Joe was his first name and Jinguji was his last name, the group of people immediately knelt down. Antonio bowed his head in apology. Asked if he was a noble from another country. Understanding the situation he was facing, Jinguji quickly reassured Antonio, telling him there was no need to kneel and affirming that he was probably not a noble. To avoid trouble, he pretended to have amnesia. Said he didn't remember who he was. Gilbert, the swordsman accompanying the group, nervously asked if Jinguji had passed through the lost woods to the north. When he enthusiastically confirmed this, Gilbert immediately declared that Jinguji was a lost cause, causing the group to feel sympathy for him. They concluded that going through the lost forest had caused Jinguji to lose his memory, and were surprised that he was able to get out alive. Believe in your story. The group believes that Jinguji is in trouble and graciously invites him to come with them to the city, as a way to repay him for saving their lives. Antonio wants to reward Jinguji properly when they return to the city. With that decision, the group continued their journey. On the way, Antonio explains in detail about this world. This is a fantasy world, like in games and novels, with magic, monsters, and a culture and social structure similar to medieval Europe. This world consists of walled trading cities that function as economic centers, where residents belong to organizations called guilds. For example, the Free City of Saveni is governed by a standing council, made up of representatives from the church, the garrison, and the manufacturing, merchant, and adventurer guilds. However, other guilds such as the Mercenary Guild do not have a say in the council. Antonio explains that Gilbert and Hannah, members of the Adventurers Guild, have formed an escort to protect him, a merchant from the Merchants Guild, while trading goods. Despite losing a horse and a cart, Antonio considered the situation a blessing in disguise because the party had collected 3 ogres. Jinguji was surprised to learn that the ogre he had defeated was actually of great value in this world. Here, monsters are disassembled and reused as materials, with ogre hide used to craft armor. Since powerful monsters are often difficult to defeat, a large monster like an ogre can sell for a considerable price. Antonio did not hesitate to offer to buy all 3 ogres, surprising the adventurers. Just 1 ogre was enough for someone to live comfortably for a whole year, and in just a moment, Jinguji became very rich. The carriage shook on the bumpy road, causing Belle to lean towards Jinguji and accidentally touch him with his rabbit ears. She immediately blushed in embarrassment, while Jinguji was surprised to discover that her ears were real. Antonio laughed at his reaction, thinking that perhaps he had also forgotten the existence of beast people in this world. He asked Belle to introduce himself. Bowing his head in thanks, Belle formally introduced himself as Antonio's servant. Her cheeks turned red as she greeted Jinguji. Her outfit and bunny ears immediately reminded Jinguji of the bunny-eared waitresses in cafes in Akihabara. Surprised to meet a real beastman and finding Belle extremely adorable, Jinguji tried to control his emotions and politely greeted her. Antonio, curious, asked permission to ask Jinguji something. He noticed Jinguji's strange outfit, especially the pattern and fabric it was made of. As a merchant, Antonio couldn't hide his interest in Jinguji's equipment. But Jinguji was well aware that the people of this world would not be able to understand the military technology from his world. Not wanting to attract too much attention, he again relied on his memory loss story. Jinguji slowly explained that the patterns on the clothes were called camouflage. The excuse was that his fuzzy memory prevented him from providing more information. When Antonio showed interest in his helmet, Jinguji also gave some basic information to avoid more troublesome questions. Antonio then asks to hold Jinguji's gun, believing it to be a wand. Following military procedure, Jinguji removed the bayonet, pulled out the magazine, and pulled the reloading lever to keep the gun in a safe position before handing it to Antonio. "Hope you don't ask too much." Antonio suddenly realized that what he thought was a wand was actually made of iron, especially impressive for its weight. He commented that this was the most exquisite wand he had ever seen, then wondered what it would take to get it. Antonio's curiosity made Jinguji a little worried, but fortunately, Antonio quickly returned the weapon to him and apologized for his suddenness. Antonio patted his forehead and explained that he had a habit of getting excited when he came across strange objects that could not be found on the market. With a slightly embarrassed expression, he apologized again, and Jinguji silently remarked that Antonio seemed to be a good man, perhaps what one would call nice. In the end, Antonio's questions lasted long into the night. When the group stopped at a clearing to camp, Antonio assigns Belle the task of preparing the meal. He took out a bag with strange symbols and placed it on the makeshift table. From the bag, he pulled out a large amount of food, utensils and dishes from the small bag. And he quickly deduced that the ability to inventory seemed to be a common type of magical tool in this world. This is an expensive item that can only be used by the owner, and is indispensable for travelers. This made it feel more natural for Jinguji to take items from his own inventory. Jinguji felt like he was in heaven when he was served delicious food by the maid with adorable bunny ears. Belle, who sat next to him, blushed with embarrassment. He was grateful to have been invited to dine with his new companions, even though he had only met them by chance not long before. But Jinguji quickly decided that he couldn't just be the beneficiary of this. Jinguji turned to Antonio and offered to share part of the food he brought with him. He explained that thanks to the goddess's blessing, Jinguji was able to take food from his storage every day, due to this inventory having the ability to replenish items from his previous world. However, this does not apply to items from the new world. Thanks to that, he was able to resupply ammunition and food every day. When Jinguji took out a series of food boxes, Type 1 combat rations, from his bag, Antonio and Gilbert looked at him in shock and disbelief. Jinguji explains that inside the boxes is food. You just need a can opener and boil the can for 30 minutes to heat the food. After finishing, he opened the boxes. Inside were 3 servings of rice, 3 side dishes, along with 3 boxes of takuan, yellow radish pickles. Jinguji invites his companions to enjoy a meal. And they looked at those dishes with wonder, apparently never seen rice or takuan before. The 3 carefully tried the first piece, and stopped, amazed, to the deliciousness of the dish. With military habits, Jinguji quickly finished the meal, observed his companions enjoying the canned food he had prepared, then smiled with satisfaction. He felt tired after the first day of exploring this new world, his eyes glued to the starry sky. Meanwhile, Antonio was shocked to learn that canned food has a shelf life of up to 2 years. He excitedly asked Jinguji how to make these dishes. But the conversation was interrupted by the emergence of the free city of Siveni. This city is like a fortress, surrounded by thick walls, with a few strictly guarded entrance gates. Carts lined up in long lines, waiting for their goods and identification documents to be checked before being allowed to enter the city. Jinguji began to worry because he did not have identification documents and wondered if he would be denied entry into the city. When it was their turn, Gilbert recognized the officer doing the inspection and greeted her happily, calling her Amanda. After some banter, he announced their special purchase: 3 giant goblins, ogres, surprising the female officer. Gilbert laughed in amusement at her surprised reaction upon hearing that Jinguji had taken down all 3 goblins by himself. After the goods inspection is complete, their team proceeds to the step of confirming identity. Gilbert took out a name tag from his neck for reference, and Amanda quickly confirmed his identity as an adventurer. Next it was Antonio's turn. Trying his luck, Jinguji also pulled out his JSDF Japan Self-Defense Force name tag. Surprisingly, Amanda checked it and confirmed his identity. Welcome to the city. Once inside, Gilbert comments that Jinguji is a metal ranked. Not surprising after seeing him use what they called explosive magic. When Jinguji inquired further about this, Gilbert attributed it to his amnesia and explained that members of the guild were ranked based on their abilities and achievements, with medal tokens reserved for those who achieved a certain rank. After hearing about their respective military ranks, Jinguji realizes that both Gilbert and Antonio are his superiors. He also realized that the goddess had promoted him 2 ranks, from 1st sergeant to 2nd lieutenant, as part of her blessing on him. After that, the adventurers parted ways, each going their own way. The adventurers returned to the Adventurers Guild to report the completion of their mission. Jinguji went with Antonio to the Merchants Guild. Entering the Merchant Guild, they were greeted by 2 beautiful women. Antonio introduces Jinguji as his guest. And the 2 girls politely asked Jinguji not to use weapons in the building. However, Jinguji's mind was completely dominated by their beauty. Because he rarely met women during most of his time in the Japanese National Defense Academy, their presence made him almost immune to female attraction. When Belle left to prepare tea, Jinguji was led to Antonio's study and asked to sit. Observing the luxury of the room, he concluded that Antonio must be a very important person. At that moment, there was a knock on the door. A beautiful elf woman entered. Antonio asked with a worried face. Antonio reassured her, explaining that it was true that his life had been threatened, but Jinguji had successfully destroyed all 3 goblins. The goblin looked at Jinguji intently, seems to still be wary of him. Strangely, her appraising eyes made Jinguji even more attracted. He was immersed in those thoughts. Until Belle walked in with a tray of tea. Immediately, the elf stepped forward to hug Belle, causing Jinguji's female interaction meter to peak. The goblin then asked Belle if Jinguji was the one who saved her. When Belle confirmed, she turned around and apologized for not introducing herself, calling herself Eldra, vice president of the Siveni Merchant Guild, and revealing that Antonio was the guild president. Jinguji suddenly realized the great influence of Antonio, whom he compared to a general. At the same time, he realized that Antonio had deliberately not talked about his status. After the introductions, Antonio opened a drawer and took out an identification card, similar to the one Amanda had used at the city gate, to check the origin of Jinguji's military ID. The result shows that the card is registered in the country of Azuma, which Eldra explains is an island nation located in the far east of the continent, in the middle of the ocean. When she heard the name Azuma and saw Jinguji's appearance, she couldn't help but think of the hero Kojiro in the last Great War 80 years ago. According to Eldra, at that time, the Demon King and his demonic army launched a war of aggression against other races on the continent. When everything seemed to be about to die, the hero Kojiro appeared and assist the weak resistance forces in defeating the Demon King's army, using strange military weapons to achieve victory. After the war, Kojiro left to find his homeland and founded the nation of Azuma. Eldra points out that, from what she heard, Jinguji looks very similar to Kojiro. In his heart, Jinguji silently admitted that everything sounded like his Japan, and if this happened 80 years ago, then the hero Kojiro would have been summoned straight from World War II. In the end, Antonio couldn't find any more information about Jinguji, but Eldra believes that the people of the Goblin Village can know more about the hero Kojito and the nation of Azuma. She promised to contact and find out, and Jinguji immediately agreed, wishing to know more about the hero and Azuma's origins. After that, Belle left for work, and Antonio invited Jinguji to lunch. They went to a luxury restaurant, where Antonio was respectfully welcomed, and the group was led into a private room for more privacy. During the meal, Antonio offered to buy Jinguji a glass of wine. And in the true spirit of military training, Jinguji immediately agreed. They toasted to a safe return journey. Suddenly, a booming voice called Antonio's name loudly, and the door burst open. An old dwarf appeared, clearly angry, asked Antonio to explain the reason for calling him out of the job midway. Jinguji realizes that this world also has dwarves, like elves. When the dwarf looked at Jinguji with piercing eyes and asked who he was, Jinguji responded politely, extending his hand in greeting. But the dwarf angrily slapped his hand, saying that he did not like such politeness. The dwarf is really annoying, Jinguji thought to himself when he saw his harsh reaction. Antonio laughed, greeted the dwarf by the name Tendar, then explained Jinguji's story. Honest dwarf, Jinguji thought to himself, when Tendar apologized for his behavior after learning that Jinguji was a lost man. Antonio revealed that the reason he called the production guild owner over was to introduce the canned food that Jinguji had shared with him. Jinguji immediately gave Tendar a sample box. Antonio talks about the long shelf life of food. Then asked Tendar if he could create something similar. Tendar accepted the challenge immediately, snatching the food box from Jinguji's hand with excitement. Antonio ordered more wine to be brought. And while the food was being served, Jinguji explains the basic process of canning to Tendar. He talked about how this helps reduce the growth of bacteria on preserved foods. Not being an expert on the subject, Jinguji could not answer Tendar's questions about how to remove air from the food box. The dwarf angrily slammed the empty wine bottle on the table. Tendar attributes this gap in knowledge to Jinguji's memory loss, and exclaimed that he must have gone through a lot of hardships. He pointed straight at Jinguji with his beef, urging him to eat. The dwarf is so kind, Jinguji thought to himself as he witnessed this energetic sympathy. Jinguji started cutting the meat in front of him and enjoyed his first fresh meat since he was reborn. He stopped to feel the taste of the beef, along with a rich sauce imbued with flavor from vegetables. Looking at the food and box in front of him, Jinguji suddenly had an idea, and so did his companions. Everyone thinks about canning a steak. After finishing my steak, along with a few more bottles of wine, Tendar wiped his mouth and stood up, declaring it was time to return to his forge. While Antonio suggested meeting again at the Merchants Guild to discuss the canning project further, Jinguji, still surprised, thought to himself, he eats faster than me, as he watched Tendar leave his chair. But his attention was quickly diverted when he saw Tendar take out a watch from his robe. Realizing the value of the artifact, Eldra confirms that Jinguji is indeed related to Kojito. She reveals that this watch was passed down by the hero Kojito after the war. This device allows dwarves and elves, who have a different sense of time than other races, to work together effectively. During that period, Tendar also made a copy of this watch. Kojito not only shaped the war through individual strength, but also through strategies and standardization. He established the world's units of measurement for weight and length, completely changing the way civilizations operated here. At the Merchants Guild, Tendar returns to meet Antonio and Jinguji. Attentively observed the food boxes being boiled. He commented that this way of heating is really smart. Jinguji reveals that these food boxes contain curry that he had not tried before his reincarnation. He further explained that this dish is often eaten with white rice. Antonio, although he had never seen anything similar, was attracted by the delicious aroma of the dish, while Eldra was surprised by the unfamiliar brown color of the curry. When the dish was served, the two presidents immediately tried this spicy dish and seemed very interested. However, Eldra was still hesitant because of the curry's muddy appearance. Finally, with hesitation, she also tasted a piece. Seeing that, Jinguji worriedly asked her how she felt. Face red, Eldra admitted that this taste could not be described in just one word, and her answer pleased Jinguji more than ever. After the meal, Antonio and Tendar continued to have a heated discussion about what food should be canned first. Jinguji deduced that they should start with the heat treatment method, since the device that created the vacuum environment would probably be difficult to replicate in this world. At that moment, Belle entered the room and whispered something to Antonio. Antonio explained that the Adventurers Guild had asked him to come immediately. Although worried, Antonio quickly ended the meeting and asked Jinguji to go with him on a quest at the Adventurers Guild. There, they were warmly welcomed by Gilbert, even Tender followed. However, a crowd was gathering, their eyes were all directed towards a barbarian who was shouting loudly at Albert, Gilbert's brother, and the president of the Adventurers Guild. On seeing Jinguji, the savage turned around and called him a braggart, declaring that there was no way he believed that Jinguji could take down 3 ogre demons alone. Those who witnessed the battle quickly confirmed Jinguji's words. With anger, he smashed his shield on the floor. Calling himself Goliath, nicknamed the Iron Man, a C-rank adventurer, he shouted loudly that even he, with his extensive combat experience, could not defeat an ogre alone, so it was impossible. How could a young man like Jinguji do it? Jinguji wasn't sure whether this man was being overconfident or tacitly admitting weakness, but he realized that he had unintentionally offended someone with a higher rank than him. At Tendar's suggestion, Goliath decided to test Jinguji and led everyone to an arena. There, the barbarian carries his armor, sword, and famous shield. He placed the shield against a wooden crate, while Tendar prepares to shoot a fireball at it. The fireball exploded upon contact with the shield, but the shield remained unharmed. Goliath proudly boasted that his iron shield could repel any attack, much to the admiration of the crowd. Tender, with curious eyes, also had to admit the remarkable power of the shield. However, he asked Jinguji if he wanted to apologize and skip this challenge, but Jinguji firmly refused. His military instincts quickly arose, and Jinguji prepared carefully. He lay down on the ground, propped up the bipods of his rifle and aimed straight at the shield. Seeing this, Goliath was confused and asked loudly, Tender, what are you doing? Tender now covered his ears tightly, explaining that Jinguji had warned before using what they called explosive magic. Jinguji held the gun firmly, focused on aiming carefully, and pulled the trigger. Causes a large cloud of dust to rise around the target. When the dust cleared, Goliath stood stunned. Even the crowd couldn't hide their surprise. His iron shield spun around for a while and then fell to the ground, holes filled with bullet holes. Goliath was speechless. While Tendar just casually commented that Jinguji was right not to defeat the target head-on, since even the chest armor and wooden barrel behind were punctured. Jinguji smiled faintly, put the gun aside and replaced the magazine with a new one. While the crowd erupted in applause at the impressive performance, all were convinced by his extraordinary strength. Goliath sighed regretfully for his shield, but Tendar stepped forward and patted his shoulder to comfort him, saying that he should take the shield to his blacksmith's workshop for repair. However, Tendar did not forget to warn that the repair cost will be very expensive. Turning to Jinguji, Tendar couldn't hide his admiration, praising his explosive magic. Surprised by Tendar's knowledge, Jinguji speculates that since he owns a watch, Tendar may also know about Kojiro's equipment. The dwarves are cunning, Jinguji thought to himself as Tendar agreed to continue calling his rifle explosive magic, on the condition that Jinguji tell his entire story. Jinguji's thoughts were interrupted by Albert, Gilbert's older brother, who, like his younger brother, immediately patted him hard on the back and repeatedly praised his explosive magic. Eldra turned to tell Belle to drop her ears, and as soon as she did, Beast Girl noticed a female adventurer named Anne jumping into the arena, looking nervous. Panting, Anne reports that a serious problem has occurred near the northern village. A Ivern, ferocious dragon, has appeared near her hometown. Jinguji also sensed the danger in this announcement. Anne confirmed that a messenger from the village had come to the guild to report the incident. Anne then turned to Jinguji, begging him to come to her village immediately to use his explosive magic to destroy the Ivern. Jinguji remained calm, while Albert asked the girl to calm down, then turned to ask the crowd to send someone to the guild to mobilize the guards. While Tender explains to Jinguji about Ivern. This is the smallest type of dragon, capable of flying at extremely fast speeds and with scales as hard as steel. But the most worrying thing is that they love to eat human flesh. Albert immediately began organizing a pursuit team, recruiting all metal rankers present along with leather rank mages to participate. Looking at his destroyed equipment, Goliath offers to borrow new equipment from the guild so he can join the team. Jinguji apologizes for destroying his shield. But Goliath admitted that it was his fault for starting all of this, and affirms that he will rely on Jinguji in the upcoming battle. Under Albert's command, the extermination team was quickly formed. Explorers respond to emergency situations with almost military style. The guildmaster noted that the fastest way to reach the northern village was to use horses traveling along the city's main road. Anne earnestly urged the team to immediately depart through the main road. But Albert cautiously reminded that the sun had set. Even the city streets are filled with monsters at night, making travel dangerous, even on horseback. With no safe route, they decided to leave early the next morning. Anne was disappointed, her hands clenched in anger. When remembering his village was attacked by Ivern before. Heartbreaking memories of her brother and friends being eaten made her not want that to happen again. Seeing Anne's despair, Jinguji stepped up and told Albert and Gilbert, "I will go first to the village." He claims he can run faster than a horse, even in the dark. This statement made Gilbert doubt its feasibility. But at the city gate, Antonio told Jinguji that he was looking forward to witnessing the tricks he would show. Appearing in the background, wearing a helmet, Gilbert praises that Jinguji is truly an extraordinary magician who can use explosive magic to save the village. When asked about the outfit, Belle explained that Jinguji had asked her to lead the way and lent her the helmet in preparation for riding the iron horse they were about to use. Hearing that, Gilbert exclaimed in surprise, "The iron horse?" But at that moment, Jinguji appeared, declared, "I will come before everyone and protect everyone in the village." He rode on a Kawasaki KLX 250 motorcycle of the Japanese Self-Defense Forces, racing down the dark night road. Meanwhile, on the watchtower in the northern village, a guard carrying a spear keeps watch. Upon seeing a strange light approaching from a city street, a teammate asked, "Is it a Ivern?" But the guard pointed to the light and said it was something strange approaching at low altitude. At this time, Jinguji and Anne went to the Loth village chief's house to be informed of the situation. He said 6 people had died at the hands of the wyvern. The monster only attacks at dawn, causing the villagers to lose sleep for the past 2 nights out of fear. Noticing that Anne was trembling, Jinguji patted her helmet, reassure him that everything will be okay, then asked the village chief for more information about this monster. Standing on the watchtower, Jinguji scanned the horizon for any trace of the wyvern, with Anne standing beside him. After a moment of silence, he broke the tense atmosphere by suggesting dinner. And take turns keeping watch, to ensure they stay alert when monsters appear. Anne protested, but the rumble in her stomach betrayed her words. A moment later, Jinguji handed her a tray of hot katsudon. Thanks to the goddess, his inventory not only contained Japanese self-defense force equipment, but also includes the personal items he brought with him before his death, including the katsudon plate he just bought. Although she had never tried this dish, Anne commented that it was delicious. After she calmed down, she began to tell Jinguji her story. Anne said that her parents died when she was very young, leaving her and her brother to rely on each other in the village. After her brother passed away, she decided to become an adventurer. The bow she carries once belonged to her brother, and she wants to use it to destroy the wyvern, as a way to close the pain in her heart. Leaning against Jinguji, she thanked him for listening and helping her remember her brother. Talking a lot made her feel relieved, and she fell asleep without realizing it. Just as dawn broke, she was awakened by Jinguji. People warn that the wyvern is coming. The two quickly carried out the plan. The monster hovered over the village, turning around when it heard a loud explosion below. Jinguji was waiting in the village square, his rifle loaded. When the monster swooped down to attack, he recalled the information said. Wyverns usually attack in a straight line. Aim for the wings, the part not covered by hard scales. He pulled the trigger. The bullets penetrated, damaging the wings, causing the wyvern to fall to the ground. The monster stood up roaring in pain and anger, while Jinguji remained standing, letting the wind from the wyvern's wings blow back towards him. When the monster tried to fly up, a sharp arrow appeared from Anne's bow straight into its eyes. Seizing the opportunity, Jinguji quickly fired a grenade from his rifle, aimed straight for the monster's head. The powerful explosion ended it all, and the wyvern collapsed, motionless. When Anne opened her eyes, she saw Jinguji standing tall over the monster's corpse, his face full of pride. The loud explosion just now shocked her, but the victory had been decided. Not long after, members of the Adventurers Guild also arrived. They departed from Sveni just before dawn and took the shortest route to get here. Dwarves are so selfish, Jinguji thought to himself when he saw Tendar frowning because he couldn't get there in time to destroy the monster. Goliath stared at the wyvern's corpse, and Jinguji stepped forward, giving him several scales he had collected from the monster. To repair your shield, Jinguji said. This unexpected action made Goliath extremely happy. It seems that this was Tendar's idea. Meanwhile, Gilbert praises Anne's role in the battle. He said that if her brother approved, she would be worthy of being promoted to leather ranker thanks to this feat. Jinguji, without hesitation, offered to testify for her, even giving her the helmet he once lent her as an early gift. Anne, a little confused, took it with a shy expression. That evening, Jinguji returned to Sveni and was invited by Antonio to stay at his house in gratitude for taking down the wyvern. Having gotten used to being on night duty since reincarnating, Jinguji was grateful to sleep in a comfortable room where he could truly rest. While relaxing, Belle knocked on his door, announcing that the bathroom was ready. "Take me to the bathroom." She guided him into the large space filled with warm steam. Sitting in the warm water, Jinguji contemplated the current situation. He was in a world full of monsters, but strangely enough the GSADF's devices worked perfectly. I never thought I could still protect someone even after death, and wondered if a woman from his previous life would feel the same way about sacrificing herself to protect someone. While he was lost in thought, he was suddenly pulled back to reality. When Belle walked in, wearing only a towel, she asked if she could wash his back. Jinguji feels torn between the desire to have a beautiful bunny maid taking care of him and the feeling that this is not right. He kept quiet as Belle washed his back, but inwardly thought he shouldn't have let her do this. When I smell a pleasant scent, not soapy. It took all of his remaining self-control to reach for the towel and tell Belle that he could do it himself. Returning to bed, he summed up his exciting day and quickly fell asleep. In the dream, a girl from the past named Hitomi told him he did well, causing tears to flow down his cheeks. A few days passed. Jinguji remained at Antonio's house as a guest since the wyvern attack. While walking down the hallway, he came across two of the merchants' wives, something that shocked him because polygamy is common in this world. Not just Antonio. He and Belle awkwardly greeted each other before continuing to walk. Today, they went together to the production guild to check on the progress of the canning project that Antonio had asked him to assist with. Before leaving, Antonio suggested that he take Belle with him to assist. At Tendar's workshop, Jinguji is surprised to see that the sample can he gave the dwarf now has an exact copy. Tendar praised the can's clever sealing mechanism, then popped the cap on a bottle of wine to celebrate. Dwarves work fast, Jinguji thought, as he listened to Tendar describe how they tested the can by adding food, using heat to suck the air out, and then sealing it to create a vacuum effect. Turning to face Jinguji, Tendar clarified that he wasn't doing all this work for free. In response, the soldier quickly gave him a well-deserved reward. Not long after, Tendar crashed the reconnaissance motorbike into the wall. "I'm still getting used to it," the dwarf explained. Tendar seemed very interested in the car, and kept begging Jinguji to lend it every time he saw it. But every time it ended in a car crash. Even so, he was still safe thanks to the solid body of his species. Car crashes are no problem, because Jinguji can summon a new car every day from the continuously replenished inventory. When Anne appeared and greeted him, she was happy. Shows off his new ID card, made from leather and flying dragon scales. She revealed that she had actually been promoted to leather ranker. That ID card was made by Tendar, but the irritable dwarf immediately reminded her that she hadn't paid. Fearing the cost might be too high, she hesitantly asked to pay later. And Tendar agreed. Dwarves are so cunning, Jinguji thought, realizing that Tendar had no intention of making her pay, simply teasing her. Belle asked Anne if she had shown her ID card to the director, and when Anne replied that she was planning to go there, she invites both Belle and Jinguji to come along. They go to an orphanage where both Belle and Anne grew up. This place is managed by the church and overseen by the director and Bishop Margaret. As they entered, Bishop Margaret suddenly bowed her head in respect when she saw Jinguji refused to stand up despite his repeated requests. Her words shocked Jinguji. "Welcome to this humble world, apostle of the goddess." She explained that she could see the goddess's protection and blessings on Jinguji, is the first to receive both since the hero Kojiro appeared. She pointed behind him, and Jinguji turned to witness a scene as majestic as that of a Russian military cathedral. Kojiro leads the attack against the demon army, riding in a Japanese Type 89 tank. From World War II, with the Beastmen manning the other tanks right behind. Seeing this scene, Jinguji immediately deduced that the hero Kojiro also received the inventory blessing, like him, and realized they had a lot in common. He wished he knew more about that man. After discovering that Jinguji was an apostle, Anne and Belle became tense, visibly nervous towards him, as if he were giving off an inaccessible aura of mystery. To break the tense atmosphere, he invited them both to eat, congratulated Anne on her promotion, and confirmed that he would pay. Anne leads the group to a restaurant she is familiar with, where she greets Chef Marduk like an old friend. Jinguji was surprised to see that a teppanyaki stand existed in this world. And was even more surprised when Marduk immediately recognized him by his nickname, Exploding Joe, named after his famous explosive magic. He found this nickname quite embarrassing, but did not object. Marduk enthusiastically made a special dish for Jinguji. Prepare an okonomiyaki pancake. Jinguji was surprised when this dish appeared here, and was even more surprised to see Anne cutting the cake kunsai style, making him wonder if this was also a legacy from the hero Kojiro. While he was still thinking vaguely, Belle noticed and asked, but at that moment, screams rang out from nearby. Jinguji turned around and saw a young man glaring at a large man standing in front of him. With an arrogant attitude, the tall man pulled out his sword, despite their subordinates' reminders that they were in the city. He pointed his sword at the young man on the ground. Vowed to forgive him if he apologized. The mercenary raised his sword, ready to slash down on the blue-haired young man. Without warning, Jinguji immediately fired a warning shot near the attacker's feet with a Sig Sauer P220. Then raised his gun and aimed straight at him, asking him to put down his sword. The mercenary glanced at Jinguji with hatred, but immediately noticed the indentation on the paving stone next to his foot, where the bullet had just landed. His men recognized this as Boomjo, causing the officer to consider the situation. He chose to draw his sword, cower and leave with his accomplices. Jinguji noticed the blue-haired young man intending to chase after him, but he quickly grabbed his wrist and asked if it was okay. The young man trembled, pointing towards Marduk's food counter, and declared that the scent is so enticing, before devouring an okonomiyaki. Seeing this scene, Jinguji realized that this young man was about to collapse from hunger. Immediately invited him to eat comfortably. Bell was amazed to see the young man eating cake after cake, while Marduk wondered how long he had been starving. The young man revealed he had not eaten anything for 2 days. The blue-haired young man, with a full stomach, thanked Jinguji for saving him. He introduced himself as Locke, from a southern village. Locke promised to repay Jinguji one day and then left. He looked relieved after having a full stomach. Meanwhile, Jinguji wondered if the mercenary officer was also from a strange place like him. Anne surmised he was a mercenary, based on rumors of an influx of mercenaries from the fortress of Tars west of Siveni. Unlike Siveni, where the merchant and adventurer guilds predominate, Tars is the domain of the mercenary guild. Jinguji recalls how Locke rushed at the other officer and wonders what the connection is between him and the mercenaries. His thoughts were interrupted when Marduk brought him a tower of okonomiyaki filled with meat, as a reward for helping the blue-haired young man. Marduk also praised his explosive magic ability, especially the dent he made right under the mercenary's feet. When he started eating, a new idea flashed in Jinguji's head. The next day, he went to the orphanage with the Merchants Guild members and Bishop Margaret, informing the children that he had a gift for them. At the appointed time, Marduk and Tender appeared. "Bring the food you asked to prepare." "Takoyaki?" Antonio was extremely excited about this new dish. While Tendar passionately enjoyed the takoyaki, Crankieth, the talented blacksmith, was asked to make a hollow iron plate with great precision. Even though it was just one night, he fulfilled the request. Marduk, already fascinated by the dish, also enthusiastically participated in preparing the ingredients, including dried seaweed, mushrooms, and octopus, though Eldra was initially unenthusiastic about the creature's terrifying appearance. In the end, she could not resist the special flavor of takoyaki. Margaret thanked Jinguji for bringing such a rare and delicious dish, while Antonio came up with the idea of turning takoyaki into an exclusive business for orphans. This was something he and Antonio had discussed the night before. Clearly, the young people from the orphanage, like Anne, Belle, and Marduk, had to face many difficulties before being able to become independent. By giving exclusive rights to produce this dish to the children's camp, not only will the children's lives improve, but it will also boost the market and create more jobs. Jinguji smiled as he looked at the happy children. Belle, his face slightly red, thanked him for thinking about the orphanage. She said that he is not only strong but also always helps others, and very kind. Unaccustomed to being praised by a beautiful girl, Jinguji hastily replied that he was just trying to do what he could, then quickly ate the takoyaki, accidentally burning his mouth. He thought to himself that if he could help without having to use his powers, he would be willing to do anything. However, he decided to continue training with his equipment. The next day, Jinguji went with Anne and Belle to the west bank of the Great River south of Siveni, be ready to test out new weapons. Checking his inventory the night before, he suddenly noticed some new equipment appearing. It seemed that his defeat of the monster had upgraded his rank, and the goddess had bestowed additional weapons to match his new abilities. Observing the other bank of the river, he discovered a large rock protruding from the cliff, and decided to test the Panzerfaust III, an anti-tank weapon. He pulled the trigger, the bullet rushed straight to the target, explode, and turned the rock into small pieces. Anne asked him in surprise if he had seen that rock. At first, he thought she was referring to the target that had just been destroyed. But then the girl pointed toward the river, where a rock is moving through the water, surprised him. When he saw 3 giant stone giants crossing the river, chasing a ship, Anne realizes that if not stopped, these creatures will head straight for Siveni. Immediately, Anne and Jinguji returned to Siveni and reported the situation to the Adventurers Guild and the guards. To prove it, Jinguji gave the smartphone in his inventory to Amanda and Albert. Both were stunned when they saw a video recording of stone giants chasing the ship. Albert explains that these are guardian golems, ancient artifacts guarding ancient ruins in the south of the city. However, even Goliath had never heard of them moving before. Realizing the danger these giant creatures pose, Albert immediately ordered his guards to raise the alarm. Warning bells rang everywhere, people at the port were evacuated inside the city walls. Those capable of using long-range magic and long-range weapons were placed on the barricades to prepare to deal with the golems. As the port gate slowly lowered, Jinguji asked Amanda to allow him to stop the golems before they entered through the east gate. At the same time, he told Anne to monitor the golems' movements from the castle walls. When giant creatures emerged from the water, Jinguji took up a position on the roof of a house overlooking the harbor and summoned heavy weapons. He observed the golems chasing the ship from before, while the crew hurriedly loaded something onto a cart driven by a mercenary sergeant. An unusual sound rang out, and he realized it was magical energy accumulating in a golem's head. Immediately afterwards, it released a ball of fire, destroying the ship to pieces. Realizing that these golems could use offensive magic, Jinguji quickly took up a fighting position, deploying the M2 heavy machine gun on the tripod he had just summoned. A series of .50 BMG bullets were discharged. Destroy stone block. Cut off a golem's arm. Without hesitation, he aimed at its head, stopping the buildup of attack magic, and then shot at its legs, knocking it down. Gilbert and Anne watched from the castle walls, amazed by Jinguji's skill. However, Anne quickly warned him about the remaining 2 golems approaching. Was now attracted by his shots. Without hesitation, Jinguji continued to fight fiercely, quickly neutralize another golem. But the last one, instead of attacking directly, used his strength to lift up his fellow's body and throw it hard towards Jinguji. He just had time to rush off the roof before the giant rock landed in its place. Standing face to face with the last golem, Jinguji immediately summoned a Panzerfaust 3 from his inventory and placed it on his shoulder and opened fire, blowing off half of the monster's face. However, when falling, the golem began to release crazy fireballs from its remaining eye, causing terrible destruction in the city. Suddenly, Jinguji was horrified to see a ball of fire rushing straight towards Anne and the defending soldiers on the city walls. The situation seems irreversible when death is near. Then Goliath suddenly stood before the desperate warriors. Tell them to back off. Goliath raised his iron shield and stood firm, be ready to absorb the full force of the fireball. With Tendar's shield reinforced with wyvern scales, he absorbed and deflected the blast with a resounding shout of victory. Tendar and Goliath arrived in time, just in time to save the lives of the defenders on the wall. Meanwhile, Jinguji turned to face the last golem. But when he checked, he realized that it had stopped working. There was no life left. He wondered why these monsters were chasing the ship. Suddenly, Amanda rushes forward, bringing news that another golem has broken through the south gate and entered the city. This golem was larger, jet black, and much more intricately crafted than the previous ones. Without hesitation, Jinguji accelerated on the recon bike and rushed along the city wall to confront a new enemy. When I caught a glimpse of the monster between the building, he wondered if it was looking for something. He realized that it was pursuing the carriage driven by the mercenary officer. The officer held the reins like crazy, trying to escape the giant monster. I don't know how long it will follow. Jinguji accelerated to close the distance between himself and the golem. He considered summoning a Panzerfaust 3, but quickly realized that the use of such heavy weapons in the city would cause serious damage. Struggling to think of a way to take down the golem without damaging the city, Jinguji suddenly saw the monster stop while standing in front of Margaret's orphanage yard. Right before your eyes, the mercenary officer held Belle hostage, while other soldiers were forcing the children into a carriage. Realizing that the golem wouldn't attack if they used the hostages as shields, he ordered his subordinates to capture all the children and Belle threatened the monster not to move. When it heard the mercenaries calling the children goods, the golem seemed to want to attack them. But before it could act, a giant mechanical arm suddenly hit it hard in the face. Jinguji summoned a specialized Hitachi hydraulic excavator for disaster rescue. He immediately rushed in, confront the golem, in a dramatic hand-to-hand battle. Jinguji found that he and the golem were of equal strength. Even so, from inside the cockpit, he still tried to exploit his advantage by shooting his rifle at the golem's head. However, from an unfavorable shooting position, the shots only caused minimal damage. When he aimed at its eyes, the golem suddenly bent down and stopped. End the war. Suddenly, light emitted from its body, and a panel on its chest opened, revealing Locke controlling the giant machine. Locke weakly called out to Jinguji, causing him to wonder what he was doing inside this machine. Locke was about to answer but was exhausted and fainted, causing the golem to lose its energy and collapse to the ground. The strong impact overturned a nearby carriage. Injured a mercenary. At this time, Jinguji saw many figures starting to escape from the carriage. The angry mercenary officer kicked the injured subordinate hard, roared that the slaves were running away. Jinguji was surprised and indignant when he saw the children chained up, trying hard to escape. A little girl suddenly turned to look at the golem. Realizes Locke is his brother. The girl called out Locke's name, then ran towards him. Locke weakly called the girl's name, Miranda, and told her to run. But the officer quickly caught up with the girl and used his blade to push her to the ground. Realizing that Miranda was the target he was looking for, Jinguji immediately realized the dire situation. He aimed his rifle at the officer, but he quickly ordered Jinguji to throw away his wand, if he did not want little Miranda to be in danger. Although reluctant, Jinguji still obeyed the order, throwing the rifle aside. The officer realized that Locke couldn't move, even if he wanted to. Locke, with all his remaining strength, screamed desperately, asking him to stay away from his sister. But the officer gritted his teeth in anger, cursing Locke for getting in the way of his business. In anger, he raised his sword, preparing to defeat Miranda in front of Locke. But just as the blade was about to strike, one of the slave children used his chain to wrap around the hilt of his sword, pulled it back and shouted for Miranda to run. The officer quickly grabbed the slave girl's hair and tried to slash her, but the blade suddenly broke in two when it encountered a glowing defense shield, protecting the girl. Realizing the opportunity, Jinguji quickly pulled out the handgun from his waist and opened fire, causing the officer to lose his weapon. He warned him not to move any further. Defeated, the mercenary cursed in vain. When Amanda and the city's guards came running, the soldiers quickly controlled the officer and his accomplices. Through investigation, they discovered that a group of mercenaries from the city of Tars belonged to an underground organization called 8 Dark, specializing in slave trading. These people will be brought to trial by the Guild Council of 70 City. The guards carefully took Locke out of the golem, and he is finally reunited with his sister, Miranda. Fortunately, Locke's attack did not cause any human casualties, although brought to trial. But due to special circumstances, he received leniency. Jinguji also expressed his desire to help him reduce the charges. However, Jinguji still wondered how this young man was able to control the giant golem. Turning to the girl who saved Miranda, Jinguji gently told her not to move. When he tied her ankle wound, he praised her powerful defensive magic and thanked her for her courage. But when he looked up, Jinguji was stunned, because this girl is too similar to Hitomi, someone he never forgot from his previous life. Jinguji used the iron crab excavator to clean up the remaining debris from the destroyed south gate, help speed up the reconstruction process. At his signal, Locke's golem stepped forward, gently placing the new door in place. A week has passed since the attack. As a result of the trial, Locke was sentenced to supervised probation, requiring him to stay in the city of Saveni to serve the community. This lenient sentence is thanks to Locke's efforts to save his sister and the fact that he is still young, only 18 years old. Additionally, Bishop Margaret sensed that Locke had been blessed by the goddess. This allows him to control the golem. Miranda was surprised to learn that his brother had done it without realizing it, but Locke explained that he had acted in a moment of desperation. Smiling, Bishop Margaret suggested that he learn to use his powers. Standing among the ruins of the church, everyone decided that Locke needed guidance to understand his abilities. And Jinguji was chosen as his guide. The two worked together to rebuild the city. Locke was excited to be able to help. But I'm still quite shy when I realize that many young girls are admiring me. The people of Saveni have started liking this hard-working teenager. A black-haired girl named Nakrien came up with a few children to see the iron crab, marvel at its enormous size. While the children went inside for lunch, the girl still stood. Jinguji couldn't stop thinking about how uncannily similar she looked to Hitomi. Nakrien then returned the scarf to Jinguji, thanking him for helping him. But a strong wind suddenly blew, blowing the towel away. Jinguji silently reached out towards the girl, but then clenched his fist, reminding himself to stay alert. There's no way she could be Hitomi, who died in a terrorist attack in his previous world. He was pulled out of his thoughts when Belle approached and announced that everything was ready for the tour. Jinguji nodded his thanks and motioned to Locke, reminding him that they were going to see the house. As Locke's guardian, Jinguji decided to help him become independent by owning a house in Saveni. When Locke proposed, Antonio quickly searched for suitable properties for them. After that, Nakrien left, and noticed Jinguji's eyes on her. Belle quietly asked him if she wanted to come along. The group continued their journey to see the house, and it was a large old inn. Locke was full of excitement and eagerly suggested parking the golem on the lawn in front of the house. Meanwhile, Jinguji was impressed with the bathroom on the second floor that offers views. Belle turned to ask Nukdan what he thought about this place. But the girl just remained silent. After a moment, she flusteredly confessed that she had demon blood, which had provided the power that had allowed her to use magic before. Belle gently points out that she is also a girl and declares that she cannot let the boys decide where to live. An opinion from a professional servant was the only thing Jinguji could think of as Belle tactfully judged the house to be too large and difficult to manage, estimating it would require at least 3 servants to maintain, which it will cost quite a bit. She turned to Nakrian and said that they both needed to give their opinions as well. Nakrian hesitated but agreed. Then went on to point out that parking the golem in the front would block the sunlight, while parking it in the north backyard would disturb the neighbors. After agreeing on that, Belle held Nakrian's hand and the two happily headed to the next house. After going through Nakrian's refusals and visiting a few houses, they eventually reached the last property on the northern edge of the city. This was a rather modest house compared to the places they had viewed before, but it allowed them to place the golem conveniently next to the castle wall without disturbing anyone. With only 3 rooms, a single servant could manage the house. Having met the basic requirements of the group, they decided to stay there. Marduk and Anne showed up to help pack, and soon more people started arriving as well. Jinguji wondered about Anne's giant luggage cart. And she explains that because she had to leave the guild dormitory due to age restrictions, Antonio asked her to live with him and Locke. Antonio even writes a letter of recommendation for this purpose. In return for taking on additional housemates, Antonio will provide them with a servant, and Anne is excited to live with Belle again. Initially confused, Jinguji quickly realized that Antonio had deliberately arranged for everyone to live together in a friendly environment where they could support and care for each other. Later, he heard that this house originally belonged to Antonio. Jinguji deduced that this mischievous businessman had deliberately shown them unsuitable houses first, knowing that Jinguji would hesitate to accept this house or Belle's help directly. So he arranged everything skillfully to ensure everything ran smoothly. After the conversation at the Merchants Guild, Eldra left, leaving Jinguji and Antonio to talk privately. Antonio revealed that he had arranged all the necessary procedures so that Locke could register as a member of the Adventurers Guild, even while he was still on probation. He also agreed with Jinguji's assessment that Locke's strength was suitable for adventuring. However, Nakrian's case is more complicated. She comes from the demon race. And due to the influence of the last war, the world's negative view towards the demon race is still very deep. Even if Nakrian is free, it will still be difficult for her to be independent. To Jinguji's surprise, Antonio revealed that he had found a previous case of a person of the demon race being registered as an adventurer. He pledged to arrange all necessary procedures with Albert to support Nakrian. When everything was resolved, Jinguji returned to his new home and offered Nakrian some takoyaki. "Thank you for helping me choose this house." Nakrian guessed that the food was a thank you, but Jinguji didn't mean it that way. Getting straight to the point, he asked her if she wanted to become an adventurer and join your group and others or not. Meanwhile, the roar of an engine rang out from the forest. Anne warns Jinguji that if they go too far, they will be lost in the middle of nowhere. But he was extremely excited to start the training session. He drove to a remote area, not realizing that the rest of the group was terrified as they experienced high speeds in a motor vehicle for the first time. The lightly armored vehicle moved through the forest and stopped in an open area. Immediately, Jinguji began a military-style training exercise, ordering the group to get out of the vehicle. Before that, he gave the combat members camouflage uniforms. Standing in front of the group, he announced that the Jiitai adventure team of the Siveni Adventure Guild would begin a field exercise. The name Jiitai was given by him to honor the Japanese self-defense forces. The night before, Jinguji toasted the birth of the Jiitai team, but received only silence, except for Belle's enthusiastic applause for their work in exposing the dark society. Their group had been recognized by the Adventurers Guild with a high ranking. But Jinguji thought that everyone would be happier. However, Anne and Nakrian point out that this means they will take on more difficult missions, and not everyone possesses strength like Jinguji. He immediately countered that everyone has their own skills. Anne with her incredible accuracy, Nakrian with her powerful defensive magic, Locke with her giant golem, and Belle with her amazing cooking skills. Anne explains that people who don't use magic and lack good equipment and experience won't be able to work with someone as high-ranked as Jinguji. Nakrian added that she was once considered a failure because she only had defensive abilities without any offensive magic. Locke, constantly chewing his food, frankly admitted that besides controlling the golem, he couldn't do anything else. Meanwhile, Belle just quietly waved his ears without saying anything. Realizing the situation is more serious than he thought, Jinguji decides to reveal a secret. Right in the empty lot, Jinguji set up a temporary shooting range and demonstrated how to shoot guns in shot-by-shot mode. To prove that his skill was not explosive magic, but the power of weapons. This means anyone can use it. He wants them to learn how to use guns to protect themselves, prepare for the dangerous missions ahead, with the belief that they will use it to save many lives. Jinguji started with Anne, instructing her on how to aim and operate the rifle. Even though the first shot missed the target, she was still amazed that she actually got the shot. He then explained the inner workings of the gun and warned her to be careful to avoid accidents. Anne quickly improved, hitting the target all 3 times in 3-shot burst mode. Next, he trained Nakrien. The half-demon girl was surprised to find that she had accidentally used attack magic when she hit the target. Then it was Locke's turn, who also learned how to use a rifle. In the end, Belle was instructed to fire the shotgun in self-defense, and Jinguji noted that next time he would prepare earplugs for her to reduce the noise. When all the bullets were used up and the old bullet casings were collected, the group rested to eat lunch, and Jinguji brought along the canned food that Tender had prepared for them to try. At first, Nakrien was as skeptical as everyone else, but when she tasted it, she realized that the taste was really delicious, making her irresistible. Meanwhile, Anne asked about her performance. Even though she only replied briefly that she did a great job. In fact, Jinguji was truly impressed with her superb shooting skills and perfect eyesight. Jinguji's thoughts were interrupted by Belle's scream. They turned around and saw a small slime crawling on the ground. Anne suggests that the group hunt slimes to earn extra income for Jietai, because the magical crystals in their bodies are very valuable. Locke and Nakrien coordinated to push the slimes right into Anne's shooting range. With excellent skill, Anne hit each of their crystals in 1 shot. When Belle signaled it was safe, the group quickly gathered the crystals and gathered them into a neat pile. Following Belle's suggestion, Anne used water to wash off the crystals, helping to neutralize the corrosiveness of the slime. Explorer Anne was excited about the number of crystals obtained, and was surprised when Jinguji gave her and the group bottles of soft drinks from a famous brand without copyright. After enjoying a drink, Jinguji decided to end the training session and return to town. But before getting in the car, Anne suddenly ran after a giant slime. Not heeding Jinguji's warning that she should not act alone, Nakrien immediately ran after her to stop her. Anne continued to chase the slime without paying attention to her surroundings, until the creature merged with a larger slime, forming a giant monster that enveloped her. Right at the critical moment, Nakrien appeared promptly, erecting a defensive barrier around the two before the slime swallowed them. Jinguji immediately appeared, noticing Anne's rifle being dissolved inside the monster. He tried firing his gun to rescue his comrades, but had to stop when he realized that the impact from the bullets could injure the girls, and that his gun was not strong enough to penetrate the slime's dense body. Seeing Nakrien trying his best to maintain the barrier, he wondered how long it could hold. Nakrien, realizing the danger, quietly warned Anne not to talk so that she could concentrate fully on maintaining the protective spell. Jinguji quickly thought of using the mechanical arm of the iron crab to save Anne and Nakrien before their barrier melts. Just as he secured the barrier with the clamp, the giant slime suddenly tried to pull the whole machine inside. Undeterred, Jinguji switched to reverse mode and stepped on the accelerator strongly, successfully pulling both girls out safely. Turning back to face the monster, he used his mechanical arm to search for its crystalline core. With a precise clamp, he crushed the core just before the iron crab began to melt. Anne apologizes for her thoughtless actions and gave Jinguji the giant crystal he had just obtained. Belle appraises the gem, while Locke realizes it is a rare treasure with healing magic. Belle believes that Margaret at the orphanage is very knowledgeable about healing magic, and Jinguji suggests donating the crystal and profits from slime hunting to the church, making Anne feel regretful. He then ordered everyone to prepare to leave, and put the heavy machinery back into storage in his warehouse. But he didn't notice a small slime hiding on the roof of the car. When it suddenly swooped down to attack, Locke quickly pushed Jinguji aside, accepting the attack on his behalf. Margaret was praying before the goddess altar when Jinguji appeared, carrying the seriously injured Locke. Begged for help. Locke's back was melted by the slime's attack while protecting Jinguji, leaving behind severe burns and loss of flesh, made him feel cold. Miranda, Locke's younger sister, could only watch in despair, realizing that the first aid kit is not enough. Jinguji asks Margaret to use healing magic. He suggests that the treasures they collected might help, although Margaret confirms that this can be done. However, Margaret said to activate the treasure's power requires a corresponding magic, which is rare in Svenny. In pain, Locke began to say goodbye to his crying sister, but at that moment, the treasure began to glow. Margaret realizes the gem is resonating with Miranda, and felt that the goddess had just blessed her with great healing power. Taking advantage of this magical gift, Margaret instructs Miranda how to channel her power, and she succeeded in completely healing her brother's back. Later, Jinguji recounted this story to a noble lady, explaining that both brothers had to spend several weeks recovering from the terrible incident. He pointed at the two brothers happily running on the street, holding food in their hands, made the lady burst into tears with emotion. Her bodyguard, Saunders, quickly gave her a handkerchief to wipe her tears, and she thanked Jinguji for telling the story. It turned out that she had specially gone to the street just to hear this story. Anne commented that it was a bad idea to invite such a noble lady, since her carriage had attracted so much attention. However, the blushing girl objected, saying that she was having fun. She is Elizabeth, daughter of a noble family from the citadel of Tars. That morning, she had met Jinguji at Antonio's house, when her father, Lord Bunker, had come to attend a business meeting. As it turned out, Jinguji's Jietai group had become a topic of discussion among the nobles, and the unaware soldier had carelessly accepted Elizabeth's invitation to chat about it over a cup of tea, even invited the whole group to come along, completely unaware of her flustered and blushing expression. Anne nervously told Belle that Jinguji did not seem to realize that Elizabeth might be planning to propose to him. But Belle just smiled and gently replied that in Jinguji's mind, Jietai was already his family. At that moment, Marduk approached, happily announcing that he had successfully recreated Thai pho and invited Jinguji to try it. Because the concept of noodle soup never existed in this world, Marduk tried to reinvent it because he loves Southeast Asian cuisine. Marduk also invited Elizabeth to try the noodle soup, but both she and bodyguard Saunders were confused and didn't know how to eat. They watched Jinguji and Locke slurp their noodles loudly, unable to hold back their expressions of surprise and slight disgust. Saunders quickly raised his hand to shield his lady from the splashing water droplets, making his pure white robe dirty. He was angry, but Elizabeth quickly realized that this was probably a common way of eating for commoners, and determined to try eating elegantly. She carefully used chopsticks, trying to eat without making a sound or splashing water on herself. Ingeniously, she finished eating without leaving a single stain on her dress. However, an incident occurred when Locke accidentally spilled soup on her dress. Just then, Tendar walked in with an annoyed look on his face, called Jinguji over and asked him to listen. He announced that a coup had just taken place at the citadel of Tars. Meanwhile, Saunders stood on the Adventurer Guild's castle wall, his eyes watching the unrest as Goliath approached and asked about Lady Elizabeth. Goliath announces that Elizabeth has calmed down, but her mother and brothers are still in the mansion. Although feeling helpless, the knight advised Goliath to put his trust in Jinguji and the Jietai group, as they were on their way to Tars at high speed. On the Elav armored vehicle, Jinguji asked Naktian to provide a map of Tars' citadel, and reminded the team about the current mission. Meanwhile, at an emergency meeting of the Sveni City Council, Gilbert reported the details of the coup led by the Mercenary Guild, taking advantage of Lord Bunker's absence. Rebels looted and vandalized everywhere, while Lord Bunker's forces tried to hold out to protect the people. The council unanimously condemned the coup and decided to send reinforcements to the anti-coup faction. At the headquarters of the Sivani Alliance forces, Albert summoned the adventurers to present a plan based on war information from Tars Castle and Lord Bunker's fortress. He explains that fighting is still going on inside the fortress, and the most urgent task now is to quickly establish a line of communication with Lord Bunker's forces. Albert assigned the reconnaissance mission to the Jietai group, and Jinguji declared that he had something to investigate in the city, and received a long-range radio to keep in touch. Before the group leaves, Antonio reveals to Jinguji that the letter sent by pigeon from Tars was actually sent directly by his daughter, Marianne, begging him to rescue her. Along the way, Jinguji informs the team that they will go to Marianne's house, rendezvous with Gilbert, and then relay the information to other units before evacuating the civilians and retreating. Belle is used to driving these vehicles, while Anne is still trying to adapt, and Miranda is starting to feel motion sick. Meanwhile, in the city, Locke shouted at his sister to strictly follow Jinguji's instructions. Nakrian realized that Locke's anxiety stemmed from his knowledge of the brutal behavior of mercenaries. She suggested that Miranda could come back if she wanted to. But she resolutely continued. Determined to do my best to help those who may be going through the same hell I did. Nakrian coldly accepted Miranda's determination, but Belle quickly eased the tense atmosphere by opening a box of rice cakes. Saying that they all share the same feeling of wanting to protect someone, she suggested holding a small party with snacks and soft drinks to welcome Miranda to Jietai. And the girl emotionally agreed. Belle gave the drink to Nakrian. Although she initially refused, she eventually accepted the rice cake. The group continued driving through the night, and while the people in the back seat rested, Jinguji asked Nakrian if she liked rice cakes. She explained that it brought a feeling of nostalgia, because the taste was similar to a snack her mother used to make. The soldier sympathized, sharing the same feeling of enjoying dishes that reminded him of home. Nakrian then asked Jinguji if she reminded him of anyone, as she noticed he felt both relieved and sad when looking at her. Jinguji confirms that she reminds him of someone who was once very important but is no longer there. Jinguji wished he could protect her. And he apologized to Nakrian for looking at her strangely. Nakrian calmly responded, declaring that what was lost could not be regained, But they must do their best to help Marianne. She gave him some rice cakes as they continued driving. Late at night, they reached the outskirts of Tars, only to see guards on the city walls. Nakrian curiously wondered what Jinguji would do to find out the situation inside. Suddenly, he signaled and they all looked up to see a drone passing by, surprising the group members, calling it a little fairy. At Marianne's mansion, a worried servant asks Gilbert if aid is really coming. The swordsman confidently replied that they could count on Jitai, and Jinguji explodes. Suddenly, Jinguji's drone appeared by the window, carrying a radio. Via radio, he contacted them and Gilbert quickly updated the situation at Tars as well as Marianne's family. Jinguji then proposed a plan of action at dawn. After completing the report, Jinguji gathered the team. The group gathers to discuss. But the original plan with minimal fighting was no longer feasible, because Marianne's child has a high fever. Jinguji decided there was no time to waste. They must attack the city wall directly to reach Marianne's house as quickly as possible, so Miranda can heal the baby. Anne was worried about breaching the wall, fearing that this action could cause harm to civilians in the town. However, Nakrian coldly said that there was no one else who could do this. Jinguji suddenly punched the car's hood hard, revealing that the prisoners had been executed right on the city walls, while some guards sat and gambled with the loot they had just plundered. But not long after, a buzzing sound echoed from the forest, startling the soldiers. At first, they thought the fireballs appearing in the sky were shooting stars. Just a few seconds later, fireballs began to fall. Destroy the city? The city gates were blown open by accurate fire. Jinguji ordered a ceasefire. The group quickly moved to the citadel in Type 96 armored vehicles and Type 16. They rushed through the main street, heading straight for Marianne's house. The armored vehicles were immune to fire magic attacks and arrows from the mercenaries, causing the enemy to gradually lose the will to fight. Before the rescue, Jinguji ordered Bell to load grenades and turn the main cannon backwards. At that moment, a magician was about to collapse a watchtower onto the vehicle. Without hesitation, Anne opened fire, turning the enemy into ash. Jinguji stepped on the accelerator and rushed through the collapsing watchtower, determined to save everyone at all costs. Meanwhile, Marianne holds her baby tightly and refuses to leave her side, despite Gilbert's advice. Suddenly, Jinguji rushed through the wall, appearing just in time to save them. Gilbert, Marianne, and the baby quickly left the house. When Jinguji ordered his team to receive the rescued people, introducing himself politely to Marianne, Jinguji led them to the APC armored vehicle in a perfect and organized manner. On a nearby building, two figures watched from afar, wondering if Jinguji was the second incarnation of the old hero. Jinguji then ordered Nakrian to guide the rescued people to the vehicle. However, one of Marianne's servants stops Nakrian, demanding to know why there is a demon here. The question was interrupted when the mercenaries threw fierce fireballs at them, causing Jinguji to hastily urge everyone to move faster. Miranda walked up to Nakrian, who was standing dumbfounded, and told her to guide everyone into the Type 96 car. With determination, Nakrian assumed the driver's position, preparing to depart under a hail of fire. The convoy began moving in a difficult situation, having to constantly change direction to avoid attacks from magicians. However, the mercenaries kept their spirits up, even adapting by collapsing buildings to block the way. Amazed by their quick coordination, Jinguji asks Gilbert about the mercenaries' chain of command. Gilbert admits he doesn't know, as he was investigating the Dark Guild when the coup suddenly broke out. Gilbert further explained that the coup may have been orchestrated by the Dark Guild, but there is no direct evidence, even when following the cash flows. The group then senses the presence of people possessing special abilities. Marianne's servant angrily concluded that it could only be the devil, and wondered how they dared to do this. Marianne looked at Nakrian, her eyes mixed with suspicion and sympathy. Nakrian lowered his head, his heart heavy with sadness. She felt like someone was inviting her to join a group, but quickly dismissed that thought, loudly declaring to everyone in the car that Jitai would protect them. She then turned to Jinguji, saying that she had a plan to escape the siege. The mages saw the convoy separate, and as expected, they focused on the combat vehicle because it was easier to see than the APC with its lights off. Nakrian asked Jinguji to create a distraction, while she uses her ability to see through the dark to drive through the night and lead everyone to the exit. They finally reunited with Jinguji in the suburbs, after cutting off their pursuer. At the stop, Nakrian opened the back door of the APC so Miranda could begin treatment. Marianne's maid insisted that they take the baby to the hospital, but she stood still as she witnessed Miranda's magic miraculously restore the child. Nakrian gave a small smile when he saw the baby regaining health, and is shocked when Marianne suddenly thanks her for all she has done. Suddenly, the maid ran a distance, knelt to the ground, both hands hugged the broken face. Her outer skin fell off under the influence of recovery magic, revealing her true self as a member of the demon race. The clearly visible horns and claws stunned the group. Nakrien immediately recognized this person as a member of the ancient demon clan. Jinguji warns Anne to get ready. While Nakrien said in surprise that she once believed that the demon race had become extinct since the old demon war. Surprised to see them still alive. Gilbert stepped forward, his eyes narrowed. Upon realizing that the Dark Guild is actually run by demons, use the skin of a murdered person as camouflage. The imposter confirmed it, its face cringing as if human skin was just a piece of dried meat. Marianne turned pale when she understood that this person had killed and eaten her real servant. The demon revealed that he had switched places with the servant as soon as he saw Gilbert sending pigeons for help, just to have the chance to meet Jinguji from Jeitai in person. It smiled cruelly, thanking Jinguji for this opportunity, but Nakrien quickly warned him not to be provoked. Jinguji pulled out the pistol and coldly asked what he wanted. The demon stared at him with cold eyes, claiming that the magic tools he possesses are interesting. It confirmed that he was a reincarnated person sent by the goddess. And asked Jinguji if he really knew anything about Kojiro, but he did not waver, coldly asking again if he was truly reincarnated. What would it do? The demon smiled sinisterly, suggesting that the goddess was deceiving him and using him to carry out her own plot. It is then revealed that the demons are gathering reincarnated people to revive the demon king and rule the world together. The demon immediately made an inviting proposal. Join their side. To reclaim what has been stolen. But Jinguji remained steadfast and flatly refused. He affirms that what has been lost cannot be regained. But he wants the freedom to protect the people in this world. Seeing that, the demon shook his head regretfully. Suddenly, the ground shook violently. A giant worm suddenly emerged from the ground and rushed straight towards the baby. The demon immediately spread its wings, revealing that its lower body was essentially a giant sucking mouth of a worm. It soared into the air with the screams of the child in its arms, threatening that if Jinguji moved or aimed the cannon at it, the child would die instantly. When the demon planned to leave and eat the child. Suddenly, a bullet hit the demon's head and tail, causing it to collapse. Nakrien promptly rushed forward and caught the baby falling from above. Jinguji looked up and saw Anne standing on a high tree branch, from the sniper position she had prepared before starting the treatment. Jinguji raised his pistol and aimed at the demon. Before dying, it groaned with regret for not eating the child sooner. Its body began to melt, flesh and skin falling away, revealing the bones underneath. Forms a slimy black liquid. The surrounding ground turned black, and a foul, toxic gas rose up. Nakrien hastily warned Jinguji to hold his breath and keep his distance. She explains that upon death, the devil releases a curse, and if not handled quickly, its body will poison the whole land, and may even revive. Receiving orders from Nakrien, Miranda used her healing magic to contain the spreading curse. But the black mucus still leaks to the ground, destroys any creature that comes into contact. Miranda must brace herself to stop the spread. But she is gradually exhausted and cannot maintain it for long. In the moment of danger, Jinguji tries to find a solution. Jinguji knew that they would be wiped out by the curse if he did nothing. He considered using explosives to completely destroy the demon's corpse, but realized that if even a small piece remained, the curse would continue to spread. Gilbert then asked if he could summon any magical tools to deal with the curse. Jinguji confusedly searched his inventory and his memory, then an idea flashed. He ordered Miranda to back off. Move yourself towards the demon's skeleton. Hold your breath. Jinguji reached out and began storing the demon's body in his inventory. The whole team watched in amazement. As the black slime, bones, and curse gradually disappeared from the scene, sucked into his storage space. When the process was complete, he breathed a sigh of relief, confirming his theory was correct. Looking back, he remembered the time Belle asked him to take care of a rat she caught in the kitchen. At that time, Jinguji did not want to kill it in vain and planned to release it into the forest. However, carrying it across town is very troublesome. He thought about trying to store it in his inventory, believing that the objects in there wouldn't affect each other. But when he did, he could only store the cage. And the mouse ran away. Through that experience, he realized that living creatures could not be stored in his inventory. This would hinder the transport of prisoners of war or important personnel. However, the hunch that corpses could be handled as common items was proven correct. Gilbert patted his shoulder excitedly, while Nakrien thought that with Jinguji's presence, they would have a fighting chance against the demon race. Belle approached, reporting that she had just received a message from the Allied 70 force. Surprised by the unexpected call, Jinguji asked Locke if there was any problem. Before Locke could answer, Antonio snatched the radio from his hand, insisting he wanted to talk. Turns out, the merchant had sneaked after the team with Locke's golem. I heard they left Tars. Upon hearing Marianne reports that everyone, including the child, is safe, and he also heard the baby crying over the radio, Antonio breathed a sigh of relief. Locke went on to report that they had joined up with the reinforcements after completing their reconnaissance mission. Not long after, Locke's golem appeared before the Jiatai team as they were returning on the Type 16 MCV. Anne quickly reported that once the two join forces, they can prepare for the night shift. However, Jinguji's mind was drifting elsewhere. Constantly thinking about the demon race's revelation about the existence of other reincarnated people in this world. He was fully aware of the possibility that some people might have joined the Demon King's army. Jinguji wondered if Kojiro had also received an invitation from the Demon King before, but he was pulled back to reality when Anne panicked and told him to stop the car. He immediately braked, almost crashed into a group of civilians. He wondered what was going on. As it turned out, the Allied forces had encountered a group of refugees from Tars before joining them, and is providing food and medical support. When the group got off the bus, Marianne and her husband were immediately recognized by some refugees. She told them about the rescue operation and what happened with the coup. The refugees are shocked to learn that their city has been occupied by the Demon King's army, something they once thought was a thing of the past. They worriedly asked about Lady Elizabeth and the Bunker family. They blamed themselves for running away, leaving the Grand Duke and Marquis behind. Looking at them crying, Jinguji realized that the Bunker family was deeply loved by the people. Gilbert reassures everyone, revealing that the Bunker Castle is still being defended by loyal forces. He promised that the Allied forces and Jiatai would rescue the Grand Duke. The crowd became agitated at the mention of Jiatai, curious if Boomjo was with them. As Marianne shyly confirmed, the whole crowd erupted in cheers, implored the soldier to save the Grand Duke and take back the city from the Dark Guild, because they cannot do it themselves. Bell now noticed, a small girl is shy in the crowd. Placing his hand on the girl's shoulder, Bell reassured everyone that Elizabeth and the Marquis were safe at Siveni. At the same time, it is revealed that Lady Elizabeth is a good friend of Jiatai. She affirmed that the group will do everything to protect their friends and family. The girl turned to look at Jinguji, her eyes full of hope. Before the expectations of a child, he couldn't ignore it but nodded in agreement. Blushing, she whispered something into Bell's ear, causing her to nod in confirmation, before whispering back to Jinguji that she thought he looked exactly like the hero Kojiro in fairy tales. Adjust the helmet again? Jinguji gently replied that he didn't look like a hero at all, but maybe Kojiro. I also thought the same thing when standing in the midst of difficulties in the occupied city of Tars. Meanwhile, in Tars, the Dark Guild members are gathered in discussion with a lord, worried about preparing to deal with the arrival of Jiatai and the magician Jinguji Jo. Two ninjas watched quietly from above. One of them wondered if he should report to Mr. Curtis and request reinforcements. However, the conversation was interrupted by a strange sound coming from outside. When they looked through the window, they saw Jinguji holding a loudspeaker, standing among the Siveni Allied forces and declaring that they would be safe if they surrendered immediately. A member of the Dark Order, dragging a chained slave child, began to panic, trying to contact Mr. Curtis. However, his accomplices remained stubborn, insisting that they could handle the situation themselves. And don't show weakness, because that won't bring any benefit when the Demon King appears. A ninja standing on high was surprised that they were still obsessed with their own interests, even now. However, the Dark Guild members remained determined to act, ordered the ninja to deal with Jinguji with his bare hands. At first, the ninjas were silent, but then began to explain his plan. In less than a day since Jiatai arrived, the situation has changed dramatically. The besiegers have now become the besieged. They made a plan. Take advantage of the tower's only door to ambush, waiting for Jinguji to lead an attack and take him down. Although they clearly knew about the magical tools that Jinguji possessed, they judged that physically, he was no different from a normal human being. A Dark Guild member doubts whether Jinguji will really come or not, but the ninjas were still confident that he would handle them personally, especially after what they did to the people of Tars. Through observations from the previous rescue, they realized that Jinguji was the type of person who was willing to throw himself into danger just to make sure no one else got hurt. The Dark Guild members agreed with the plan, but when the guy holding the chain tugged and threatened, the ninja immediately pulled out a kunai and cut the chain. Remind him of his power. They then coldly told the cloaked men to pay attention to the hostages, because without the prisoners, Jinguji would simply use his armored vehicle to flatten the tower. Outside, many mercenaries voluntarily surrendered and put down their weapons. However, no one important from the Dark Guild was among them. Jinguji was preparing a plan to attack the tower when a man wearing elaborate armor suddenly approached, and introduced himself as Fairway Bunker, Lord of Tars and commander of the defense force. Fairway Bunker gently jumped onto Jinguji's car. Open the hatch and step inside with him. He apologized for the suddenness and expressed his desire to talk privately. At the same time, he pointed out that there were spies everywhere, causing them a lot of trouble. After hearing the account of the encounter with the devil in human form, Lord Bunker is worried, thinking that this coup has more threats than just demons. He emphasized that the enemy is still working silently in the dark. And, according to the soldiers, there are rumors that the Dark Guild is affiliated with a group of ninjas. Jinguji was surprised to learn that this world also had ninjas. Lord Bunker worries that it will be difficult for them to fight these ninjas, because rumors say they are modeled after a group of assassins from the hero Kujito's hometown. However, Jinguji finds it hard to believe that those connected to Kujiro would side with the Dark Guild. When Lord Bunker asked him to help break into the tower using his powers, Jinguji remembered the demon's revelation again about the Dark Society gathering the reincarnated people. Seeing that Jinguji seemed to be pensive, Bunker misunderstood, thinking he suspected he might be a devil in disguise. To prove that I'm just human, Bunker pulled out a dagger and slashed his cheek, letting the blood flow down. Shows that under the skin is only human flesh and blood. Lord Bunker explains that the slaves held in the tower include children of Tars, and he does not wish to delay any longer. Putting away his bloody dagger, he begged Jinguji to help save his city and people. Once again, Jinguji had no other choice other than agree. Not long after, the Jitai team and Sivini alliance forces were summoned outside the tower. Jinguji warns the defenders inside of the coming attack. He called on them to lay down their arms and open the gates to surrender. Meanwhile, a ninja was lurking at the top of the flagpole, waiting for an opportunity to ambush him when he passed through the gate. Some mercenaries considered Jinguji's offer, but others refused. For fear of being punished for the crimes they have committed, they decided to attack first. One arrow hit the Type 16 MCV, but only bounced harmlessly off the vehicle's armor. The vehicle immediately counterattacked with its main cannon, shooting straight at the flagpole, where ninjas hide, completely destroyed, and caused debris to fall on her head. Bell confirms that the city gate has been destroyed. And Jinguji and Nakrian accelerated on their motorbikes to perform a lightning attack, rushing towards the tower. The archers and magicians prepare to fire back. But Nakrian quickly erected a magical barrier. Repel all attacks, open the way for them to reach the broken entrance. On the road, Jinguji's eyes stopped when he noticed a woman's hand sticking out of the rubble. Thinking that maybe they had missed a hostage during the reconnaissance process, he immediately stopped the car, jumped out and ran to check. As Jinguji approached the woman, ignoring Nakrian's warning to leave the protection of the magical barrier, he quickly realized she is wearing a ninja outfit, even though she looks like a normal girl. At that moment, an arrow from the archer on the wall came down, piercing his arm. The archer prepares to shoot the second arrow, but was stopped by a warning shot from Nakrian, who immediately asked Miranda to quickly give first aid to Jinguji. When the half-human, half-demon girl removed the arrow from his arm, he signaled her to focus on treating the ninja instead of himself. Suddenly, the ninja regained consciousness for a moment, and whispered something into Jinguji's ear, before passing out again. Nakrian ran over in panic and asked what happened, but Jinguji did not answer, hastily giving the ninja to Miranda. Then rushed straight into the tower gate. Nakrian tried to stop her, asking him to wait for her to back her up with defensive magic, but he didn't stop. Miranda asked worriedly about Jinguji's injury. But the conversation was interrupted when Locke drove a Type 96 APC armored vehicle right behind her, reminding her to quickly get those who needed to evacuate onto the vehicle. Locke reiterates that they are still on a mission and need to maintain their responsibility. Miranda protested, however, insisting that Jinguji had ordered them to continue the campaign and that Jitai had always obeyed his orders. At that moment, the ninja began to regain consciousness. Inside the tower, one of the members of the Dark Guild. Call your accomplices closer to talk. Avoid ninjas being able to read their lips. He asked what they should do about the current situation. His accomplices point out that a ninja is outside dealing with Jitai, but this guy is more worried about what will happen next. He emphasized that they couldn't let everything end here before meeting Mr. Curtis. His accomplices reassured him and pointed towards their boss, who was using magic with pleasure to torture a woman chained to the wall. Screams of pain echoed throughout the room. Not even the ninja could do anything to stop it. One of the Dark Guild members confidently asserted that even if the chains were cut, the hostages would not be able to escape on their own. However, his accomplices were skeptical, asking if the ninjas would really abandon their friends who were being held hostage. At that moment, from the darkness, a demon appeared, munching on a victim's arm. With a cold voice, it declared that as long as they kept the hostages, they could still threaten the ninja. A slave suddenly awakened from his mute state, screamed, and tried to run away, but unfortunately, The demon's monstrous body, like a giant worm, suddenly grabbed her head, swallowing her entire body. The two Dark Guild members argued fiercely about the current situation. While their boss left, the remaining one was left behind, tied to the body of the prisoner that had just been digested by the demon. This guy started to infer that if a ninja has abandoned his comrades, they can take advantage of this opportunity to attack the boss. However, he quickly dismissed that idea, claiming that even if that happened, things wouldn't change. He is confident that Jinguji's end is near. While warning his accomplices to prepare to escape, the two began to consider hostage removal plan and manipulate ninjas to still profit. However, their dark plan was suddenly interrupted when Jinguji appeared. Launched a direct kick to their boss's face. The boss was shocked before they could get past the security steps. But Jinguji warns him not to underestimate the strength of the people of the Japan Self-Defense Force, JGGSDF. As for Nakrian, thanks to Jinguji's training, she can also keep up with the speed and skills. However, the boss really wanted to know how they defeated the ninja, but Jinguji simply replied, "She is not our enemy," implying that he had heard the ninja's cry for help before. Meanwhile, the chained woman recognizes Jinguji's voice and feels some hope, but that hope quickly disappeared when the last member of the Dark Guild activated the magic seal, causing her extreme pain, and gave orders to the remaining ninja, "Kill Jinguji." Before that, a flashback. After being tortured by Lord Init, noblewoman Sakuta used telepathy to contact the ninja group, ask them what they know about Jinguji. When pulling down the veil, the ninja group reported that Ji-Tai was moving towards the tower, and he will come to the rescue. And as she predicted, Jinguji is the type of person who will personally rush in to save people, no matter the danger. However, a black-haired ninja wondered why Sakuta did not allow them to destroy the Dark Guild himself, thinking that they didn't need to go to Ji-Tai just to deal with someone like Init. But Sakuta replied that this was a tactic meant to test their patience, warning them not to fall into the trap. She explains that the Dark Guild and demons can never resist playing with human hearts, and even if they take one down, there will always be a replacement lurking in the shadows. Sakuta told them not to panic. Sakuta emphasized that the opportunity only came when Ji-Tai appeared. And now is that time. In the present, the last member of the Dark Guild tries to force the ninja to obey, threatens to kill Sakuta. But Jinguji immediately warned him to release her and surrender, guaranteed safety if he complies. However, this guy sneered, thinking that Jinguji was stupid. But he replied that he had no other choice but to surrender. Even though he hesitated for a moment, the Dark Guild still resolutely kept its magic seal. At that moment, Jinguji, receiving a signal via wireless headset from his comrades outside, confirmed that the military operation had officially begun. The entire tower shook violently as Locke's golem climbed onto the outer shell. A large hand with rope wrapped around it suddenly appeared through the window, revealing Anne tied to it. Aim the gun at the Dark Guild member. She hit. Destroy the magic seal. Jinguji immediately declared the mission complete and signaled Miranda to go inside to treat the injured. However, the ninja took advantage of the opportunity to rush forward to finish off the Dark Guild member. But before she could take action, Jinguji told her to stop, causing both the ninja and the person about to be killed to be surprised and ask why he spared him. Jinguji explains that he needs to be put on trial, because Ji-Tai's mission is not just to recapture Tars, but also to bring justice and end the trauma that people have endured. The Dark Guild laughed, thinking that he was just lying, that he would be tortured later. Jinguji calmly asked, "Is that why you don't trust anyone? And do your friends all think the same?" These words made the ninja stand still, and Sakuta smiled, as confirmed that Jinguji is indeed very similar to the person she met before. Fainted for a while after waking up, Sakuta realized he was lying in bed in an unfamiliar place in the city. With sharp hearing ability, she heard the sounds of a dinner party in the palace, where the guests were celebrating Ji-Tai's victory. Enjoy delicious wine and exquisite dishes. The door opened. Belle walked in carrying a tray of food, followed by two ninjas. They immediately ran to hug her. Surprised, Sakuta asked why they were wearing maid outfits. Blushing with embarrassment, they confessed that this was Jinguji's idea, making her suspect that he had improper intentions. However, Belle quickly explained that Jinguji had discussed it with the Grand Duke of Fairway. They agreed that ninjas disguised as maids were once taken hostage. Would make it easier for the people of Tars to accept them, instead of seeing them as old enemies. When Belle opened the lid of the food tray, the ninjas encouraged Sakuta to enjoy the dish, praising its delicious taste and nutritional value. Sakuta thanked the ninjas and asked them to call Jinguji, as she had something to discuss. Meanwhile, our hero, Jinguji, is refusing the treasures given by the Grand Duke of Fairway to express his gratitude for saving the city. Anne wondered why he refused. thinking that if he received it, he could be rich without paying taxes. She also didn't pay much attention to it. The Adventurers Guild will reward them for these feats. As he approached a particular item, Jinguji asked if he could take it. Fairway immediately agreed, despite the butler's protests that it was a Bunker family heirloom. Fairway emphasized that Jinguji was the right person to own it. The item he chose turned out to be a paper crane preserved in a crystal vase. Fairway explains that this was a gift that hero Sir Kojiro left behind at the end of the war against the Demon King. This crane is meant as a wish for peace.